a concept of extensions. Extensions allows you to package your widgets or any other UI applications and then dynamically add them to any of your cockpit applications, any of your Cumulocity applications. With this, we are having two type of extensions possible. One of them is plugins. So in case if you have any element or any small application where it is just changing a small UI part, you can have them as plugins. In cases where you are having multiple UI functionalities which you want to bundle into a single application, then you can use them as blueprints. The good thing about them is that once you have these packages available with you, you can easily distribute them, reuse them in different tenants. You can also utilize them in different versions of the platform. One very interesting concept which we have introduced from 10.16 onwards is that this functionality also comes with a repository connect. So as you might be already using GitHub for your internal development processes, you can utilize that also, that once you have the package available on your GitHub repository, the GitHub repositories can be connected to the tenant. And once the package has been created on GitHub, it immediately becomes available on the your tenant. For an example, from 10.16 onwards, all the public cloud tenants have been already linked with the SAG GitHub repository. So if you now go to your packages section, which we'll also see a demo shortly, you will be able to see around 27 of the plugins already available. So that's a very important functionality which we have introduced from 10.16 onwards. And now I would like to give you a very short demo of the same functionality so that we understand how this is going to help us to have the plugins and different functionalities from the UI itself. So this new functionality you can check in your 10.16 tenant onwards. Like I am right now on the EU latest. I have right now into the administrator application. Over there, if I go to applications in ecosystem, you will be now able to notice a new tab, packages, over here. When you click on packages, just loads all the available packages currently in the tenant. There are two ways in which you can have the packages. One way is obviously the manual method, where you can see add package button on the top right. If you have the zip file of the package, you can simply select it and upload it over here. And the second method is via the GitHub Connect. So at the moment, all the tenants, if it's on the public cloud like EU latest, is directly connected to SAG repository. So you can see around 25, 27 plugins already available over here. You can notice a tag community over here. This signifies that this is coming from the repository at the moment. In case the tag is like this plugins, this has been manually installed using the add package button. So you can select any of the plugins. Let me try the community plugin one. Over here, a few days ago, we had added a new widget, data point graph. When you come on this page, you are able to see the basic info of the plugin and a button to install them. So one very good thing about these packages is that you can have multiple plugins within this package. So for an example, this has two different plugins available. Let me try installing one of them. One very interesting thing to note over here is that it is asking you to select the custom application. This means that these plugins at the moment can only be installed into the custom applications. You will need to clone your existing subscribed applications so that you can utilize this functionality. At the moment, I already had the applications cloned. And now I can install this. Once I install this plugin, I can then see that I had installed it onto the cockpit. I know it's a data point graph. Now I will get these additional options when I try to utilize this plugin. So let me try adding a new widget, the same data point graph which I just installed. Now you'll notice I am getting an extra data point graph option available over here, and I'm also having the default option available over here. Similarly, you can install any of these plugins, try them out in your tenant itself, and then you utilize them. Another interesting thing which we have introduced with this concept is the versioning of these packages. So yeah, Whenever a new version of this is available on the GitHub, that is also automatically synchronized. Also, you can manually, like in the upcoming versions, you will be also able to manually change those versions. And at the moment, you in 10.16, you are not able to go back to the older versions. So with that, we are already working upon, and in the existing like upcoming versions, you'll also be able to change the versions depending upon like which version you want to utilize. And another interesting thing we have added is the availability of these plugins. So once you install the plugin, you are also given up an option to decide what's the availability of these packages. This option is only available for the cases where you are the one uploading the plugin manually into your account. So you can keep it private, which means it won't be displayed to anyone else. You can keep it market, which means it's available for subscribing to other tenants, and shared, which means it's available to all your child tenants. So these are the interesting stuff we wanted to showcase. And with this, I also wanted to share a few good examples of the open source extensions that are already available. So you might have already seen that I was trying to install a widget. So that is the first kind of extensions which are possible with this method, that you can have tons of different widgets now directly into your cockpit application. Few other good examples are the Node-RED plugin. So if you can couple this plugin with a microservice, you can even you have such use cases. And another example is device replacement wizard, which is also an example with a coupled with a microservice, that you can now use this widget to replace your devices. So if you already had a device, you now are replacing that device, and you want the measurements to remain as it is, you can use this to replace the devices. And similarly, like the MQTT mapping services. So the use cases where the plugins can be used is very extensive. It's not only limited to the widget library. It can be utilized into device management, administration, or anywhere else where you think that the UI can provide you some of the functionality. And if you couple it with the microservice, you can even extend it further. So that was it from my side today. I would now like to hand over to Ian, who would take you to the things we are having the backend for making this possible.
Yes, thanks, Paul. I hope you can see my screen now. Yeah, I'm really happy to present you now the story that we have worked like a couple of years now on Microfrontends with Angular, and I want now, after Raul already showed you a bit like this system architecture view, I want to go now a bit deeper into details about how the developer story will look like. And therefore, I want to basically start with a little introduction. What are microfrontends actually? So I really like this image because it basically shows exactly what it is, right? It's very tightly coupled to the story of microservices, right? You have a big monolith that you want to split up, and it's mostly about how you distribute your work, right? So that you don't have, when you have different teams, right, that you build different microfrontends or services that you then inject into one application and don't have this big monolith anymore, right? So imagine a checkout page, for example, on an e-commerce website, and another team is working on the product view, and another team is working on the product list, and everything then gets combined to one application, right? The issue with that is that was actually not what we had in mind when we started with the story. We wanted actually to build a whole IoT ecosystem, right? We wanted not just our internal teams to contribute to that. We want everyone to contribute to that, right? And therefore, we had a big challenge, and therefore we basically built it up on a stack that I want to explain in detail now. That is defined now, that should be used, but that I guess also guides you and helps a lot in the development process. Yeah, so I'm now going a bit more into the details, and therefore this pyramid here and the foundation basically is Webpack, and Webpack is a web bundler. There are many out there, but Webpack is one of the most prominent. And what Webpack basically does is it collects all the sources that you have when you develop a web application and bundles them into one source that then can be uploaded to a server and then served. And what's so good about Webpack is basically that it also bundles your dependencies like node dependencies, CommonJS or ECMAScript modules dependencies. All are bundled the same way, and therefore they can be used the same way. Therefore, you have, for example, default loaders in there that helps you with CSS less loading. We have in our at CLY CLI a CLY plugin loader, which helps you by loading the old AngularJS plugins that we still have. And you for sure have the Angular plugin, which helps with the whole Angular setup. So when you use Angular, you basically always have Webpack as the foundation. That's all built and packed into the CLI tool. Next on the stack is basically what enables Microfrontends, module federation. It's basically saying that you have multiple modules that you federate over each other, and it also tells how the dependencies are used, right? So the best example is always, or how you always should see it, it's basically that you have one shell application, which is here on the left-hand side, right? Which mostly is a frame, right? And in this shell application, you basically inject a remote, which is on the right-hand side, a remote application. Mostly it's running on a different URL or a different port just, right? And you inject that into the shell application. And module federation, when you have that in place, then it basically enables you to do so. What comes with module federation are shared dependencies. And this basically tells which dependencies are shared across your modules that you federate together. We have one shared dependencies out of the box, which is basically Angular, right? So that Angular is always shared between all modules. That allows us to actually say, okay, you can use the same services and the same methods that we already provide with the Web SDK to actually provide your application, right? And you don't have issues when you have then two Angular applications running that they cannot communicate to each other. They always can communicate via the base services, basically, which is a good thing. And then last but not least, what enables you to load your stuff into the Angular application is lazy loading. So this is something you always need to remember when you build a microfrontend. Basically, this microfrontend is never loaded on runtime directly, but it's actually lazy loaded afterwards, right? So first application starts, then the application recognizes that you have microfrontend, and then it loads this lazily, right? And therefore, you need to consider that because this gives you a bit of different development approaches that you need to follow, but they are very good documented on the Angular side, right? So lazy loading is a common concept on the Angular side. The good thing about all this is that basically the first three things, Webpack, module federation, shared dependencies, are all handled by our CLY CLI tool, so you don't have to care about this. Right? Only when you want to go really deep into details, you might want to care about this, but you don't have to. So everything you have to care about is lazy loading, right? So remember that these modules are lazy loaded that you inject into your application, and that they are therefore have, for example, a different injection scope, and that the rules of lazy loading apply here. Yeah, what else with lazy loading? We this extension points concept that we have in our NGX components still applies. So this is a concept where you basically say, I want, we call it hooks concept, right? I say I want to hook a navigator node into my application, right? So when the remote application tells basically I want to have a navigator node in my shell application, right? So these are this hooks concept where you can hook your microfrontend into the application. I hope this will be later on more clear when we do the demo. Yeah, part 2 is basically what is needed to build the stuff with the Web SDK and with Cumulocity platform. So not much. We basically copied the stuff that was already done for the microservices to the microfrontend stuff. As you might know, we already have the possibility to deploy an application, right? And this could already be kind of seen as an micro-frontend approach, right? So when you read about micro-frontends, you also always read about this, server-side micro-frontends, right? So basically just multiple web applications that sit directly next to each other, look the same, right? And you can switch between them. And when you ever went to our platform, you basically know that there is this app switcher, and you can switch between multiple applications that basically have the same look and feel, right? So kind of a micro frontend approach. We want to go deeper and more inject that, but we could already leverage that because we already have the APIs, right? To basically upload applications, and this is what we did in the end, right? So when you read about microservices, it's always said it should be independently deployable and loosely coupled, right? These are the main goals. So deployable we can do with microservices, but we can also do with application frontends, right? We can upload an application. Loosely coupled, this is possible with microservices now, right? We don't have this big monolith anymore. You can upload a microservice, which is mostly loosely coupled. With the front end, we didn't have that, right? It was always like you basically build one big application. We only had the app switcher. But now with the new approach, with this module federation, we also have the possibility to build smaller chunks and smaller stuff there. And therefore, we introduced what Raul already mentioned, this new concept of a package. A package is basically an application in the end, labeled as a package, and can have multiple plugins inside, can also have this deployable application, which is a blueprint. It can have versioning, and it can also be shared across multiple tenants so that you can basically provide it on the parent tenant, and child tenant can then install it. And this packages are this new format where you can choose a microfront and use that. So let's maybe go to the demo application that I want to develop today. I hope not too many people were on the summit here, the internet summit, because there I already showcased that. But maybe first, how to get started with it. So you can always npm install the @CLI tool. I have this already, so I don't need to do that. And when you have that, you can basically start or scaffold a new application with CLI new. And by just hitting that, you already get like this prompt where you say, which name should it have? I guess I put a 2 because I already have a lot of tests here. Then you can choose basically the version. Currently, the microfrontend story is fully supported in 10.16.0. We already had it in 10.15.0, but just behind the beta flag. So mostly you will choose 10.16.0. And next step is to select which kind of application you want to scaffold from. So these are our default application, administration, application, cockpit, device management. But you get now 2 new ones when you have the CLI after 10.16, which is package blueprint, that's already mentioned blueprint, and the widget plugin. And this one you basically want to scaffold from, and then you the CLI tool basically creates you a basic project where all the files are pre-configured, and all you need to do in the end is change to this folder and install the dependencies and run this project, and you will directly see this project. I did this already in this project here because we don't want to wait for all the npm installs to be finished. That takes a while sometimes. And I already aligned or did the first steps that I usually do when I scaffold a new application. Basically, what I always do is the default development server I pointed to my system, my backend system, to verify that, or to allow me basically to log in, right? Because I don't have one on production. And this is a new command, which was also introduced with the microfrontend story. This -- shell basically tells me now that I want to proxy my application to a different shell, right? I will show this and hopefully clearly explain this later on. Maybe first I want to go a bit more into details on this package JSON, because I hope some of you are already familiar with the development process. It's not much, it hasn't much changed, right? So this doesn't look very different to a normal application that you scaffold with our CLI CLI. And this was our main goal, right? Our main goal was to have basically the same development story. What changes is basically that we have a few new entries in our CLI.application entry in the package JSON, which basically tells, first of all, that this one is a package, right? Just set to true. Then the package type, it could be plugin or blueprint. We will show a plugin just today because I guess this is the most interesting part. And then second of all, you need somehow to tell, or third of all, you need somehow to tell which module you actually want to export, right? So which is a part that you actually want to give to other applications. And this is what you do in this exports part. So you can name it, you say what's the name of the module, and you give it a path and a little description. And when you look here into the widget and in the module, then you see here it's a very common module which has nothing special. It just defines me an hook component, which is in the end an widget, and defines me a simple example widget. This is all scaffolded. You can look into this when you run a new application. And as soon as you now start up your application, you have two ways of starting this. So first of all is the normal way where you go just to the context path of the application. Do this maybe first. So what is now happening? So basically what you have is an shell application, right? So the shell application, as mentioned in the beginning, right? You have your shell and your remote application, right? So the remote is a plugin we now want to develop. And the shell application is basically the application that spins up on beginning. And every package that you build basically has a shell application included. And this is defined in the app module, but our remote is a widget plugin, right? So this one is now the application I started up. And here I can already kind of verify everything what I did. So this is a module federation widget I just added. And it's added into this application because I also have in my package JSON basically this remote. And there I have defined that my widget plugin is in there. That's all, right? So this is one way of verifying my application is working, right? I basically spin up my own shell application and verify, okay, everything works, right? Another way would be I could also simply add this widget plugin module to my app module, right? This would be the classic way, but this is not what we want at the moment. We want really to have this remote application. You can also see that it's loaded remotely via the network tab. I guess I need to reload now. It's always when you have this call to remote entry, that's the sign that the module federation worked as it was designed, and that the remote entry is loaded. Now about sometimes you want to verify like your application is working not just in this sample case here in this empty shell application basically, but you might also want to have it working inside a certain cockpit application, right? So you remember that I added this -- shell here, or in any other application, like DTM application, your custom application, whatever, right? You want to verify that it works there. So now you can basically say, okay, I put the shell, I say what my shell application is. Here I'm pointing it to a cockpit in version 16. And then as soon as you have started your application, npm start, you get at the end when it's built this link here, which you can follow with control click. Basically has an URL parameter where it says, okay, I also have an Cumulocity demo plugin and plugging in the widget plugin module. And now I would also have this application here, and I have the module federation widget. While when I go to this application on the normal way, sure, I will not have this plugin because it's just now my local development. And I can now also go here and say, okay, I want to I want to rename this label here, I don't like the label, I call it 2.0. I do so. The development server registers that. And as soon as I reload my application, here this is, no, sorry, reload my application. And I want to add my module federation stuff now. I see here the changes, right? This 2.0 I just added. So you basically can directly verify what you are developing in, and even verifying it working in any application that you proxy to. So let's maybe go the full demo. I have prepared some steps that I just want to merge into this one and just go over them. So in total, it's 5 steps. I hope it's not too long. We will first start with merging in step 2. I merge them in because then we get basically this comparison thing from Visual Studio, which is quite nice. So what did we do in this first step? The idea basically is that we add some sort of a bookmarking functionality to our application now. So we want to basically have the possibility that anyone can say, okay, I bookmark a certain device, and this is then always shown in the left-hand side navigator so that I can quickly access it. As I changed my package JSON now, because I added a new accept incoming, right? I added here a new module, right? Because this is what I need to do. I also need to restart settling my development server. So this is something I want to do directly, but I should save this first. And now let's go over it. So we want to add the new bookmarks module. So that's what we added here. So we call it device bookmarks. We give it a path where it can find it. We give it a little description. We also directly import this in our local shell application so that we can verify it here working. We add the bookmarks module, which is a very simple module, which has just our common module imported, and a service, which is then hooked into the navigator nodes. And the service is very simple. It just returns us one navigator node called bookmarks, right? And with the icon bookmark and a very low priority. So as soon as this server is restarted, I can go now, or should be able to go now here, and see now when I refresh that, this is the shell, the proxied shell, this is the normal shell. This is my normal tenant. Let's close that one. So done, right? So you see, okay, bookmarks navigator node added. It cannot do anything because there is actually no functionality. And the shell application, it didn't work. Let's maybe refresh that one more time. Meanwhile, I will already go to step 2 here and explain it. Oh, step 3 now already. So we merge step 3 into it. Now commit. All we do here is basically updating this bookmarking service. Beforehand, it was only providing us this navigator node with bookmarks, which wasn't helping a lot. We now basically say, okay, give me the inventory service. We request all bookmark devices, which by querying them by a certain fragment type. The fragment type is CHY_is bookmarked. We give it a page size of 2000, so we have a maximum of 2000 bookmarks for now. Then we map them to an asset node and attach this children to our root node, which is now the bookmarking thing, and return this all and done. So now we should basically see that the bookmarks navigator node also contains the children. Yeah. So let's go here and refresh that one and see if that worked. Meanwhile, I figured out here you don't see it. Simple reason is that that I forget to that the URL parameter changes. So I go here and click here again. Now it's containing the bookmarks module as well to verify the shell application or the external shell application. And now we should also see here the bookmarks functionality. Yeah, and we have the dropdown. I already have some devices that have this fragment inside, so that's why I already see something. But yeah, next step would be to add the possibility to actually bookmark a device. So let's check out step 3 and let's go on to step 4. Changes here are basically to the bookmarks module. As said, we want to have a possibility to bookmark a certain device. So therefore, we hook a new service into the action bar. The action bar is basically this thing here up here, right? And in the service, we simply just check if the route, right, the route URL is a device route. And if it's the case, then we show the add bookmark component in placement more. If not, we don't show anything. And this add bookmark component is a very simple component which just contains a button which says bookmark device and the icon star. Very simple. So now you already see in my normal shell or in my host application, I don't have any possibility to go to any device, right? Because it actually has no link to it, right? But the cockpit application where I also shell to does have the possibility, and that's why we implemented this functionality that you can actually verify the plugin working with every application you have already deployed, right? So that you can check these details when you want to. So let's reload this application. The bookmarks functionality is there still. I would now need to go to some device. Let me see. One maybe. And in the more tab, I have now the functionality of bookmark my device. I can click this and nothing happens because there is no functionality now. Let's quickly let's do the last step, which is implementing this this functionality of bookmarking my device, which shouldn't be that hard. So check out step 4, and we're branching in step 5, which then only contains the logic to actually bookmark my device. So we add a functionality on click. You can bookmark the device. We verify if the device we are actually on is already bookmarked or not, and if this is already the case, right, and the user clicked on the bookmarking thing, then we basically update our inventory. The current device ID we update it with the CLY is bookmarked. Either we set it to null or we set it to an object, so that the fragment is set or not. And we set one internal variable to actually show the star in a different way. So that's all. Refreshing the application. Done. We can click on the bookmark device thing. The device is bookmarked. I guess we can click again on it. The device should be not anymore bookmarked. I mean, you can now do a lot of more things like add a alert message or whatever, but for now the demo should show what I wanted to show. Hopefully it was understandable. You can basically, the story didn't change much, right? You can use this extension points we already had, right? Every hook can be used. So it's not just about widgets. That's what was very important for me to show, right? But it's also about navigator nodes here. It can be an action bar. It can be a tab here, right? It can be anything, a device tab. It can be a widget. So there are many ways. You can even say, okay, I want here an action to add to the search or whatever. There can be many ways to extend this stuff with plugins. That's why we didn't just call it widgets. That's why we call it plugins, and that's what I wanted to show. Last step might be that you can now say npm run build. It will start a build. Don't need to do that because I already did that. And you can npm run deploy. And now I am simply going to deploy this to my tenant. I could have saved it. It's uploading. And now when I go to my administration, oh, sorry, it's localhost, that's why not working. So I need to go here to administration. This is actually 10.18, so this is latest development. It looks a lot different. We constantly are improving that. So it has already the new design, and it also has a more prominent way of accessing this and filters and search. But the core functionality, I would say, stays the same. What was the name again of it? Bookmark? Cumulocity demo plugin. That's the name. Yeah. There we go. We have the device bookmark functionality. Install plugin. I can select my cockpit 16, install it, and I should have the functionality. Very nice to know is now you have this version 1.00. When you want to have later on maybe a small change, right? So you say, this doesn't make sense to have bookmark device as a text here, right? I want to have, I should open this. I want this also to be different when is bookmark is set, right? So I do something like this, right? So when it's already bookmark, you say remove bookmark. And here you say basically something like add bookmark. Right, and now I'm gonna build this again and upload this again, but this will take a while. So meanwhile, we can already go back to the slides. This is now a little change. I just want to showcase that this should work. And we can meanwhile verify that the import worked correctly. So we go to cockpit application now on the live system, not anymore on the local host, right? Internet connection is a bit slow. And there we have this bookmark functionality just added to. I should be able to go to some device and again see bookmark device thing, right? Let's see if this one finished building. No, it takes a while. So we go back to the slides then meanwhile. So yeah, conclusion and outlook. Yeah, what's shown basically, the technology stack didn't change that much, right? We still have Webpack, Angular. What's new is basically this module federation in between, but CLI basically handles this all for you. Microfrontends already kind of exist, right? With this app switcher concept, we now have really extended that you have like this plugin approach where you really can hook into a certain application when you want to have just a little improvement. Yeah, so you have these plugins with module federation that you can use as useful extensions. Yeah. Packages, this is basically this new concept, an application, right, where you can bundle multiple plugins into. The idea is basically that you say, or that useful plugins might be also collected into one package, or even maybe combined with a blueprint. They will say, I have an administration app that exports a widget which is used to display on cockpit, but the other one is used to actually manage that, right? So also think about different user personas there. And yeah, and what our main goal was is to build up this ecosystem, and therefore we need a lot of useful packages, right? And this is why we really would love to that you start contributing to the ecosystem. We already have like, I don't know, around about 20 plugins and blueprints there, but it would be awesome if it even gets more. The ways to contribute actually, so there are basically three options. Option one is what we recommend at the moment. We have an by internal R&D managed Cumulocity plugin repository, where you basically could open a pull request, and when this pull request is reviewed and accepted, then in less than 1 hour and merge in less than 1 hour, the stuff is merged to the production system, which is really, really fast, right? This was before and it was taking really long. But when you contribute there, you go through the review process, then you can get really fast into your plugins really fast into the production system. There's also a lot of automation that when you really want to build your own plugin, we have there already some Cypress tests, we have automated versioning and deployments. So this is very interesting to look in when you want to see some best practices, right? We try to apply to this repository all our best practices. Second way is to talk to Raoul, right? So with Repository Connect, we have the possibility to connect multiple GitHub-based repositories. Sadly, at the moment, just GitHub, but we are working. We might be also working on GitLab or other integrations. So there might be the possibility that we say at a certain point, okay, a partner repository or organization could also be synchronized with Cumulocity. Yeah, and the option 3, mostly for on-prem customers, is that you could also configure your own repository only for this to synchronize your plugins, right? So Repository Connect is on all management tenants, or can be installed on all management tenants, and there you could then basically sync all your applications. Still, you can also always go when you, for example, when you're an enterprise tenant, then you can also upload this just to your enterprise tenant and make it available for just your child tenants. This also works, right? So there, basically, this is option 4, right? This was kind of missing. Yeah, I just built these changes maybe shortly. I guess we have enough time for that. I want to deploy these changes as well, just to showcase you that one. I deploy this also to my tenant. And it didn't work. Yeah. God, I forgot to update the version. Yeah, this was done because now I would need to basically do it once again completely. The npm run build, and yeah, it takes a while. But yeah, as you can see, so versions are not mutable, so the version always stays when once it's uploaded, right? So the reason for that is basically when somebody already has imported this plugin, then he should not, or his application should not change, right? It should not break, right? Just because he imported a plugin, and therefore the version is is always constant and cannot be changed, and you can just only add a new version on top. And this is what I try to show now. But as this build takes a while, I'm now basically ready with my presentation. I can showcase this later if there is still time. Maybe we can directly skip to or go on with some questions and answers if you have some questions.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Let me open the mic for you. If you have any questions, you of course can still use chat. Yeah. I opened the mic, so if you have a question, you can unmute yourself and ask the question directly.
There is one question in the chat that is there is a way to define the plugins that are required or used by a custom app on deployment time?
Yes, let me answer that. So basically, the applications are only added as application options, and we have those application options cascading, which basically says these are my basic application options, right? And then when whatever comes from the API extends that. And as you can place here your remotes, which are basically your plugins, you can already place here some plugins that you want to add to the application. So yes, this kind of works. We haven't used that yet, but it should be possible.
Any other questions? Three, two, one. No questions. We still have some time left. If Jan, if you want to show something, of course you can use that time.
Yeah, I just am ready now with my Cumulocity demo plugin 1.0.1 development with this little change of the add bookmark component, just to showcase this maybe shortly. I just uploaded that. It should now be visible. I don't know if it does a re-request. No, it doesn't. There we go. Now it's uploaded. New version. I can now set this one as latest. And when I go to my cockpit now and would reload this, I would still see the old version, because what happens here, I already told this, is the remote entry is requested, right? And the remote entry is actually pointing to this version 1.0.0. So it's always really pinned to that version, right? So, and this is done to not, right? So any plugin developer now decides to upgrade his plugin, and then it might break, right? And this should not happen. So, but as soon as I upload my new version and set this to latest, I at least get, when I go to my cockpit application, this is also kind of I guess a 1070 feature. I get here a list of all my plugins that are installed, and I see directly, oh, it's outdated. And I click this button and I can update this to the latest version. I set this version, I switch the version of the plugin, and now what should happen if I reload the application? The remote entry should point to the new version, and therefore the new version that we just developed and pushed should be shown now, and hopefully now, yeah, the new add remove bookmark functionality that we just added, the small fix, is now showcasing. Yeah, that's how we basically imagine that certain fixes or addition can be quickly developed without breaking any existing plugin. Yeah, that's everything I wanted to show for today.
Perfect. Thank you, Jan. Thank you, Raul. I guess there are no questions. Last chance for you. If you have questions, of course, the chat is still open. You can ask the question, or of course, you can use the tech community to ask any question about the plugins and other things we just showed you.
Yeah, I do have a question. Sorry. Thank you, Jan. A quick question. What would happen if we would deploy a widget version 1.00 and then the platform is upgraded to a newer version, which is no longer compatible with version 1.00? What would be the user experience in this scenario when the user is logging in on, let's say, 10.17, but the widget is no longer compatible with 10.17 but requires a new version?
Yeah, this is why we decided that plugins are actually only plugins are only extensible for custom applications, right? So usually you have subscribed applications that are shown here as subscribed, right? So administration, device management, cockpit are usually the subscribed applications. You can clone them to make them a custom application, but then you are pinned to this one version. And because we wanted to avoid exactly that effect, right? So the platform is updated, right? We also want and the platform gets updated, and all the plugins suddenly stop to work, right? So that's why there is this limitation. You need to first clone your application, then you are pinned to the version that you cloned it from, and only then you can add plug into it. Blueprints, on the other hand, I don't know if I have a good example here. I haven't provided anyone. And this is basically the full story is in combination with blueprints. Then blueprints are, as said, like deployable applications. And when you, I'm sorry, I don't have any good example now. But when you install, basically, maybe the Node-RED is a good example. When a blueprint, basically you have not just the plugins, but you have also this deploy application button, and then you basically can say, I deploy my application. And when this application, this blueprint is actually updated and has a new version, right? They are also versioned. Then you even get a hint on your custom application saying basically, okay, you need to update your application at the moment, right? So it's all the story is basically it's all pinned to versions, but it tries in the UI to allow you to update easily.
Okay, so it means to develop an additional widget for the cockpit, I need to fork the cockpit still. I just need to maintain an own version of the cockpit across the platform versions, right?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah.
Are you planning to improve on this, or is this the direction going forward in general?
We decided on this way because we didn't want to run in versioning hell, but we definitely want to improve on the whole updating stories so that it's really easy to one-click upgrade them when you are on a custom cockpit, for example.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And one addition to that, in the past, you had the cockpit and you have the widgets as a component hooked in the cockpit, so you have to maintain your whole cockpit web application. Now you just have a one-to-one clone, and the customized stuff is outsourced in plugins, so you don't have to maintain. So the maintenance should be reducing a lot due to the plugin concept.
So sorry, adding here on top. So I'm on a new version now on the platform. I'm on version 10.17, and I used a forked or a cloned cockpit with a custom widget on 10.16. So I need to clone the new cockpit again of 10.17, and for a customer tenant, let's say for a tenant which was using the cloned cockpit of 10.16. What would be the process then? I've adjusted my widget to work on 10.17 on the clone 10.17 cockpit, but now I have a tenant which is still using the 10.16 cockpit with a 10.16 widget. What would be the process for me then to get this tenant up to 10.17 cockpit with a version 1.01 plugin, for example?
Trying to show you how at the moment I would do it. So first of all, I would basically clone me a cockpit application to verify it. I just call it cockpit test, right? So this is even now like using 10.18 because I'm on 10.18. And I'm not quite sure what will happen now when I now install my device bookmarks. Maybe it will work, maybe not. Not sure. Because there was also there was no Angular upgrade, but let's see. And now I have just added this to my test application, and when I now open it, I can basically see and verify if it's working or not. But this would be my my simple first step via UI. As said, we try to, and I see it's still working. Now what I could do, basically two ways of what I could now do is basically I could even download this application and upload it to my existing one to upgrade it, or I could even just say, okay, as I know it's just a custom application, I delete this one and I add a new one and add the plugins to it.
Okay. And this cloned cockpit could also be subscribed to from a management tenant, or does it need to be cloned in each individual tenant? Could I have a cloned cockpit in a management tenant with the widgets that I want to deploy? I want to have available with the plugins, sorry, that I want to have available, and then others are just subscribing to it.
Sure, that works. Yeah. So you can when you go to management and there build your own cockpit, and then it's basically can be subscribed to your subtenants and using the plugins already.
Okay. But then I would just have, let's say I have 5 tenants and I made this transition, I would just have to subscribe each of these 5 tenants to the new cloned cockpit to complete the transition from the hypothetical 10.16 to 10.17, right?
Yep.
Hello.
Exactly.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Sorry for taking too much time there.
No worries. Thanks for the question.
Okay. I think we are done. Thank you again, Jan. Thank you again, Raul. Thank you, everybody else, for attending. See you on one of the next Developer Event Series events.